What is up, everybody, and welcome to Sitting with Sean, episode number 24. Today, I have a really good, really awesome guest. His name is George Brooks. How you doing, George?
I'm doing great. How's everyone doing this afternoon?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Yeah. So it's morning for me. It's afternoon for you. It's weird. I woke up and I was like, "Oh man, it's gonna be a huge time difference." Yeah, 3 hours. It
Right.
is what it is.
Not too bad.
Yes. No, it's not too bad. And George, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Well, my name's George Brooks. Based out of Dallas, Texas. Originally from Memphis. Lived my first 40 years in Memphis, but been living in Dallas 4 years. Went through about 10 years of poor mental health, poor physical health, addiction to cocaine. Really my rock bottom. But when relocated to Dallas, I started a nonprofit called METTA Association. The three things we really focus on are black male mental health, fighting recidivism, and fatherhood. We address addiction through my own struggles and how I stay sober and things like that. So I really have my own journey, but I try to use that to fulfill my purpose and try to help people. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
That's amazing. Uh, right off the bat, I want to say thank you for what you're doing for your community, man.
Thank you.
That's astounding, amazing, and something very beautiful that you got going on. But right off the bat, I looked at your Facebook page. You are a man of many hats. You are just always going, man. You said it the other night. I said, get some rest. And you said, hey, I rest when I can. And and you're a man of many hats, and in many ways, you're doing a lot of good peer work, dude. And so, I want to take another opportunity to say thank you for being a peer and doing what you're doing to help people in recovery, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I try. I try. With that, when I was going through my struggle, one thing that influenced me to this day is that I didn't have anyone to kind of look at or someone to kind of answer those questions. And one thing that I said was I never wanted to see somebody else like me have that look or be in that line or try to find that resource and not have some point of reference, or someone to say, okay, try this or do this, or you're struggling with addiction at this moment, try this to see if this works, because I know what that meant for me and what that was able to provide for me once I had those little aha moments. Because when we're recovering, we have those little moments, those little things that work for us. And those of us that survive addiction, we want to impart those to other people. Even those little silly habits, those little silly things we find that work for us, we want to share those because we know that those little things are what keeps us sober day in and day out.
Absolutely. Yeah, those little things to hold on to, even on some of our hardest days, can be the best things that we have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some of the silly monikers of keep coming back or one day at a time. I used to hate those when I was in early recovery. I don't know about you. I used to hate that shit. Like, keep coming back. Well, obviously, I'm gonna keep coming back. I have to, but it works. Over time,
Yeah.
you learn that if you keep coming back, it works. That it is one day at a time. Sometimes it's 24 hours at a time, or sorry, a minute at a time. But
Yeah.
those monikers that have been held on to for 50, 60, 70 years are still true to this day.
Yeah, and for me, a lot of times, sometimes it's a lot easier for me now. But there have been moments where it's literally been a moment at a time, a breath
Yeah.
at a time. Um, and like you have to develop your own coping mechanisms because you're not really. It gets to a point where you're not really coping for the. And this is just for me. So let me preface what I say by saying this. This is just what's unique for me. Sometimes I'm not really coping for the addiction. I'm coping for the anxiety that leads to the use, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So, like, I only really do this with my fiance because this is the only person I'm really have that comfort zone to do this with. I joke about my addiction,
Yeah.
like little things I used to do, the little
Hmm.
habits,
Yeah.
because Here's the thing about addiction that a lot of people that never dealt with addiction don't understand. Getting over the addiction is not just getting over the use of the drug. It's getting over the ritual surrounding it because those become part of the addiction as well. Making the call, how you even get the money to get it, however you get it, the waiting on it, the ritual of going to actually fix it up, that all that becomes part of it to where
Hmm.
it's dare I say fun, but it becomes part of the whole process.
Yeah,
So not only are you trying to not get rid of the addiction, because I'll speak on that in a moment,
yeah,
but you're trying to overcome that as well,
yeah,
because you not only you never get over the addiction, you
yeah,
never get over the addiction. All you really do, at least in my case, is what I ended up doing was just transposing that feeling, that high, that rush I got to something else.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm still an addict. You're always an addict because we're
yeah.
all potential addicts anyway.
Hmm.
But I just get that rush, that feeling from something else, which is my nonprofit, which is from helping people.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
those same rituals, I just moved them to something more productive and something more positive, which is something that any successful recovering addict, if you look at what they've done, that's pretty much what they've accomplished.
hmm,
Some people is religion, some people is business, some people is this, some people is that. They just found something else to Jones over.
yeah,
So that's a big successful part of overcoming addiction, because that's all you can do is overcome it and make something transformative out of it, because you'll never really stop being an addict, because we all have something that drives us. It's just with some of us it became something corrupt. It became something destructive. We just have
yeah,
to find a way to manipulate it and make it into something positive. And if we can make it into something that can help people and benefit people and be profitable to us, then that's a
hmm.
win-win situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I could not agree more. And you know, you're in the market right now for helping people. I mean, you're in Dallas, dude. There's a huge need for recovery in Dallas, and it sounds like you're doing the work, man. And so I do wanna say like kudos to you, man. Hats off to you. You're putting in the work. You're doing God's work,
Thank you.
and that's amazing. Every day that you're in recovery and that you're helping somebody out, you're saving a life. And so I
And
want
the
to say
best way
thank you.
to and I get asked this a lot. What am I doing to help people? What is it exactly what that I'm doing? There are some projects on the horizon for about the next year. Right now, the most important thing that I can do is spread awareness, and that's by getting out and making people aware of the plight of Black mental illness in
Hmm.
this sense.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't want people to hear Black mental illness and think that it is being in any way, excluding anyone.
yeah,
Here's my theory on that. I'm a Black male,
hmm,
obviously.
yeah,
No question about that. So I'm addressing home first, in the sense that once I address home first, then we can branch out and deal with other communities, because we have built up our home to where we can be a benefit to other communities, and bridge those gaps and be better suited to communicate our needs to other communities, and help other communities, and be a better neighbor in this world economy and in the world community. But we need to deal with home first, because we have not addressed our own communities. And instead of
yes,
waiting on someone to come in and fix our problems, I want to fix home first.
yeah,
Before I can help you, before I can help you mend your fence, I have to mend mine first. So that's why I'm focusing on Black mental health first. I'm focusing on recidivism, because we're releasing people back in the communities that have not had their mental health and overall health addressed, and we're expecting them to be successful. That is totally not fair.
I agree
we're, we're,
100%.
we're, we're putting parents back in the communities not whole. We're putting people back and expecting them to function and support themselves and be productive, and not giving them an even ground. I'm not talking about giving people a hand up. I'm just talking about making the ground even, and then leaving them to their own devices to succeed. And as far as fatherhood, this goes across any racial line. I've struggled as a father. I've been in custody battles. I've had every scenario, every nightmare scenario, but I've seen the beauty of fatherhood, and I want to help other men, not just black men, but other men fight for their rights, maximize their relationships with their children and with their children's mothers to be beneficial, so we can raise the best next generation we possibly can.
Absolutely, yeah, and you know, you hit the nail right on the head. You got to help out your community before those communities can prosper and help out other communities. You know,
Right.
I do work with veterans, and we got to clean up our community before we can start helping out other people community. You know, and I admire what you're doing for the black community, man. Like that, that's a lot of big work. It's a lot to fill, man, and I see the struggle of a lot of people that are in your position that are doing the same thing that you're doing, man. And you got a lot of work to do. You know, you got a lot of work ahead of you. And one of the things that you talked about is you know people getting released out of incarceration with no mental health services, no substance abuse services, nothing like that. And that's across the board, and that's something that we as a society need to get better at,
Right.
and fighting those lawmakers saying, hey, look, you just can't throw somebody in jail and then expect them to come out and be a transformed person. It doesn't
Right.
work that way all the time.
It doesn't work that way because what you end up doing is creating an economy based off humans,
Yeah.
treating them like cattle, where you know they're gonna reoffend. You
Yep.
set them up to reoffend. I
Yeah.
mean, so do we really want that? In the richest, most powerful country in the world, do we really want to have an economy based off human cattle? No, no, these are human lives, and the communities that they go back to are adversely affected by them not being uh, well prepared to contribute back to those societies, because these are human beings, these are parents, these are fathers, mothers, sons, uncles, and they
Yeah.
could be contributing so much to society and enriching their own lives. And I want to help make sure that I do what I can to make that possible.
And by doing that, you know, it also perpetuates that stigma that has been in set in place for 30, 40 years. You know,
Right,
you hear mothers saying, oh, baby dad's not shit. Well, baby dad's not shit because he's incarcerated. There's nothing much he can do. You
right.
know, and then when he gets out, nobody's gonna hire him because he's got a record.
Right, and I'm fully in support of those notions, but I'm also willing to say, a lot of times, baby daddy not shit because baby daddy just not shit, and about
Yeah.
him being accountable too for his
Yep.
actions and looking in the mirror and saying, you are from lack of a better term, a fuck up. And you have
Yeah.
to fix that too. And that's something that we address with Meta and things that we're going to enact and initiate. And in my public speaking, which is separate from Meta, that's something I candidly speak about. And in my life coaching, I candidly address that. So that's something that does not go untouched.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely, and I do appreciate you saying that, man. Is because you know, yeah, we can say it's the addiction or it's the mental health disorders, but ultimately we make those decisions. You
Right,
know, yeah, we might be hereditary, or it might be a hereditary disposition that we have those substance abuse disorders or those mental health disorders, but we ultimately choose what we
right,
do, and
right.
and so I
Because
do appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, because a lot of people say, well, the old debate whether addiction is a disease or a disorder or a choice. I'd rather not get. To me, that becomes an argument of
Yeah.
after a while, because you can say it's disease, but ultimately it's a choice. Because I was thinking about it, you got to make a lot of choices before you get high. You got to make the choice to do it. You got to make the choice to score the money. You got to make the choice to make the call. You got to make a choice. Well, first you got to make a choice of who to call. You got to make a choice of who you want to wait on. I was thinking about the process, and it's a lot of choices before you get high.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it too. And there's a tremendous amount of accountability involved in that. And I think that it's really a matter of accountability.
Yeah.
especially in me trying to protect manhood, or at least my interpretation of what manhood is.
Yeah.
Uh, Accountability comes first, and that's really what came first in my addiction is was admitting where I failed, and that's hard to do. That came in dealing with my mental health and with my addiction and with my divorce trauma and with my custody issues. Everything began with me looking at in the mirror. And the hard thing about that is that you think it's going to be punitive, and it is painful, but it gives you an opportunity to correct those mistakes. Because me really kind of turning the corner in my addiction didn't come from what people think it comes from. It didn't come from me saying, well, let me do this for my kids. Let me do this for my marriage. Let me do this for God. None of that really played a factor into it. It came from, I'm sick of myself. Let me do this for me. Because if you do it for your kids, kids will let you down. Your faith may be shaken. Your wife can leave. Your family will definitely let you down. So if you do it for anything other than yourself, the only thing that you know that have control over and can't let you down, you will fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to do it for yourself. You have to get sick of yourself. You can't do it for your kids. And that's where so many people mess
Yeah.
up. I got to do it for my family. No. And that's why so many of us relapse and slip up. We do it for the wrong reasons. And I know it's hard for people to fathom it because it sounds so selfish, doesn't it? It just sounds so harsh. I got to do it for me. Screw everybody else. But that's the only way to really get at the core of it because you did it to you.
Recovery is a selfish program.
It is.
It is. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. I said this many times. I've had stints where I have gotten sober and I did it for the wrong reasons. I did it because somebody said they're going to leave me and I don't want to feel that pain again. So I
Yeah.
was like, fuck it. Why not? And then when they left, what did I have? Myself. And I went right back to what I know. And then ultimately, this last time that I got sober, in 2019, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, the fucking problem is you. It's
Yep.
nobody else. It's nobody else. And that was at the behest of an old native man. When an old native man tells you something, you kind of have to listen to it. Or somebody that's an elder, you just kind of have to listen to it. So he looked at me and I look like a Viking. And so he's like, Viking, shut the fuck up. You created all these problems yourself. And I just looked at him at first. I was like, who the fuck are you talking to me? Right? I didn't say that to him, but in my mind, I'm like, who the fuck are you talking to me? But then I sat with it and I was like, he's right, dude. I created all these problems for myself. And that's when I had that hard look in the mirror that said, nobody else is the problem. It's you. And until you change and until you accept this for you, nobody else, you're not going to stay sober and you're just going to end up right back where you're at, right in
Yeah.
jail.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, I do really appreciate you saying that because not many people say that. Not
Yeah.
many people say that, or
Yeah.
will have
I
the
had,
courage
I
to
had,
say that.
and I had to deal with what the stuff that went back to my childhood that was bugging me. You know, I had to deal with all that old trauma, all that old stuff, male ego bullshit, and dig all the. I had to go in the way back in the closet and dig all that stuff out and deal with it before
That's
I.
nasty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's real nasty, and it took, and it really. The process started then, but it literally continues to this day. I'm still unpacking stuff because it's a lifelong process
Yeah.
to deal with that stuff, and you really have to be alone to do it and get all this stuff out. And once you start doing it, you find the need to use that thing that drives you to use, that drives you to escape, that drives you to numb the pain. Gets easier and easier to deal with. It doesn't it doesn't necessarily get rid of the addiction,
Mm.
but it makes it easier to maybe find other ways to, because when you're an addict, you know it's not good for
Yeah.
you. You know you're not eating a salad, okay? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know that. So, when you start to heal yourself mentally and emotionally, you'll notice even your body starts to crave different things.
Yep.
Physically, you'll start to crave fresh air. You'll start to crave, like you'll start to want to vape instead of smoke.
Yep.
You'll start to want to drink a little less. So you'll start to crave better habits. It's just even you have to be careful even how you venture into that.
Yeah.
because you don't want to go headlong to 3 gram a day cocaine habit to 12-hour a day church habit either.
True. It's all
So
about moderation.
it's all about moderation because their transition can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Transitioning it from something so harmful as such as drugs over to something more productive or beneficial. Because over with the transition too, and this is some of my experience, and I don't know if people really talk about it that much, is the your transition in relationships because those people in your life they have an image of you now because you're an addict. They don't believe
Hmm.
you, they don't trust you, they don't want you around, and they see any change, especially the real change that sticks.
Hmm.
That's judged more harshly with so much skepticism that you have probably lost that relationship at that point.
Hmm.
Okay, so you will probably the relation the change that sticks is probably the one that the most life altering because you'll be making that permanent hopeful that permanent change away from that drug addiction without people that you've had in your life the whole time, if that makes sense.
Oh,
At
absolutely.
that point those bridges are burned.
Absolutely.
So when you make your real change, they're so sick of your bullshit from before, they don't believe that your change is real.
Yeah.
So be prepared for that as well.
Yep. Yep. I had a few of those.
Yeah.
Uh, I had a few of those, and it wasn't um, until I actually proved myself and like showed one of them was my mother in law, and you know when I went through therapeutic courts, I told you about that, offline. But I went through therapeutic courts, and on my in my graduation, my mother in law called in. It was during COVID, and she was like, it took me till now to realize that what he did was a mistake, and it wasn't meant to be malicious. It wasn't meant for anything other than he's got a problem, and he's rectified that problem, and he's worked through it. And that, well, one that really was like an amends made between her and I,
Mm.
which was awesome. But on the other end, it was I was glad to see that she understood that for the past 9 months where I'd said it was a mistake, I didn't mean to do it. She was able to look at that and analyze it in that moment, say he he's changed, he's somebody different, he's not who he used to be.
Right.
And we're not all fortunate to have those situations, and not every relationship's going to play out that way where we're like, where they're like, oh shit, it really was a mistake and he's changed, and new person, new Sean, new George. Sometimes we're not that fortunate, but the ones that we are fortunate with, those are the ones that we hold on to.
True. And you have to go into recovery. And by recovery I mean either dual diagnosis, which is mental and
Right.
substance, or either or. You have to go into it really accepting that there may have been some damage from your illness,
Yep.
that there may be relationships that may be irreparably damaged. There may be some that you may lose in the process of your recovery, and you just have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
And one thing I always say that's controversial, especially in the black community, is I don't care if your mama's toxic, you need to get rid of her. People,
Wholeheartedly.
yeah, people are so afraid to say, "Well, they're still your mother. Who gives a damn? She's toxic. She's holding you back." I'm estranged from my blood relatives now because they were toxic, and I'm better off for it. Is it
Yeah.
easy? No. Does it bother me at times? Very rarely, but yes, at times, yes. But I have to protect myself. I have to protect my mental wellness, my mental health, my spirituality, and my positivity and faith. And
Hmm.
if I don't do that, how is that aiding my recovery?
Yeah. And you can love them from a distance.
Yeah. And I don't have anything to do with them. I don't know anything about them. They're strangers to me now, but that's the way it's meant to be. So it's not meant for everyone to be in your life forever.
Yeah.
Sometimes you outgrow people. And sometimes it's meant for you to take huge, long gaps and breaks from people for you to do your thing and them to do their thing, and then you to come back later when you both mature. Sometimes it happens that way to people. Sometimes, recovery isn't a linear thing. Sometimes lives
Hmm.
aren't always linear, and I could look at my period of abuse and my period of self neglect and all this whatever I want to call it as wasted time. Why? I learned a lot from it, and without that experience, I wouldn't be who I am today. So a lot of people look at their period of addictions as wasted time, as failure. No, it made you stronger because
Yeah.
I see the strength in people that have beaten addiction that I don't see in other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're blessed in ways we don't realize, but because we can see addiction in other people that people can't see. We can see certain things in other people that people can't see, and we have a certain compassion for people that most people don't have.
Yeah.
And we're blessed to be able to help other people, and we should take that opportunity and we should use that gift that we have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, man. So we've been sitting here for 25 minutes on an intro. I like it. I like it. This conversation I love. So let's get into it, George. What was it like in your active addiction?
It was pretty routine actually. I was living a suburban life. I was in bad physical health, pretty depressed. Didn't do much. Neighborhood I was in kind of had fallen off with the neighborhood crowd. Guys that really didn't do much but stay on the corner and use pretty much what I could. Um, Casual user, just kind of numb the pain. Dealt with my physical pain. When I could, I might get a gram. On a good day, might get 3 grams. Use it all in one day. Stuff like that, just to numb the pain, deal with the mental health pain, and really just kind of screwed myself up in a bad marriage, in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Just kind of broken.
Yeah. The recipe for disaster.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I see that a lot too, man. Like, I grew up in the middle of 5 different hoods. So I grew up right here, and we had the black community over here, we had the Bosnians over here, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, and then over here we had the Africans from Africa. And so I seen everything happening around me, and I was looking outward and didn't see anything that was happening at home with my dad. I mean, obviously, I was feeling what was happening with my dad. He would kick my ass all the time, but I was seeing everything around me, and I seen what drugs and alcohol were doing to people around me, and it really, I was like, I'm never gonna be that one of those people. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, we lied to ourselves, right? We lied
Yeah.
to ourselves.
Well, we a lot of it became victims of our environment. I think in our generation, um, it became sort of acceptable. I grew up in the '80s and '90s. That was my childhood and adolescence, and at that point, it became pretty acceptable to use pharmaceuticals. '80s it was cocaine. And I grew up watching my father, use it, and in the '90s it was pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. So it was, hey, anything happens, take a pill.
Yep, yep, yep. One of the things that I hate using other people or other things or as kind of like motivators, but when we're influenced by certain things, as far as like celebrities and shit like that, I noticed uh, I noticed that like the black community, you guys are have idols that are that are people that are rappers and stuff like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when these rappers are talking about all the drugs that they're doing and all the drugs they're selling, that kind of starts perpetuating that this is okay to do. You know what I mean?
Well, and think about that. Those aren't really idols or really looked up to people. In
Yeah.
the black community, they kind of looked at more so as clowns.
Mm.
They really aren't looked up to. It's
Hmm.
kind of like we kind of look at the rappers and stuff, kind of like these are who our kids look up to. Our kids are stupid.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's really kind of how they're looked at. It's kind of like, well, we got to do something about our kids because if these are our kids are looking up to, then our generation is in bad shape, and that's more the sentiment. They really aren't looked up to. Uh, It's more about fashion than substance.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, wow, I like what they're wearing, but they're idiots. And the running joke is how many rappers died this week,
Mm.
and they're really not taken seriously. And there really is no thing as black leadership. That's almost like saying, like when people say, like when people say black leaders, that's like saying, who are your white leaders? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's kind of
Yeah.
like if I asked you who are your white leaders, you would kind of look at me like, okay, what do you mean? And it's kind of like I would do you the same way. Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
that's the cool thing, and that's why I like having my nonprofit because these kind of conversations are kind of conversations that people don't get to have, right?
Yeah.
Because why? A lot of them are afraid to have them, and I want to. That's one thing about Meta in that we're willing to have these kind of conversations about
Yeah.
and transition about race because that's how you elicit change.
Yeah.
Because these are the kind of conversations that people want to have, but they're afraid to have. And just look how much ground was covered just in that little interchange.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
about leadership. Because I know a lot of times people say black leaders, and I know they wonder, well, what exactly do I mean even when I ask that question? Because who are black leaders? And I'm sure I may have clarified a point about rappers, and you may have thought maybe we somehow look up to them and we kind of just see them as jokes.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 points
Yeah.
learned just by talking. And that's why communication is so important. And it's such a great part of recovery.
Yeah.
Talking with other people in recovery and cluing people into these kind of conversations that aren't in recovery because that means they understand. They'll never understand. You'll never understand unless you go through recovery, but at least maybe give something or bridge some sort of gap or give them something where maybe they can empathize on some level.
Oh yeah.
And that helps
Absolutely.
everyone. So
Yeah. Yeah. And you you talked about the racial community leaders. Like, you're right. There you can't pinpoint one person. I mean, maybe in history
yeah,
I could look up and say Dr. King, he was a leader.
right.
Malcolm X to a degree was a leader. Muhammad Ali was a leader. It's hard to pinpoint in white culture who is a leader because it's not really
It's not really
white.
done like that.
No, white people haven't really had to advocate for themselves.
Exactly. And especially nowadays with the way society is cut out, you're going to see less of that now because with social media, everybody thinks they have an opinion.
Yep.
Everybody thinks they're an influencer. Everybody thinks they're a leader.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. You're doing it in a local setting, but are you really saying anything on a national level? And,
no,
and
or
that's
on
that's
a
what those
substance
men did.
level, yeah, and yeah, or putting yourself at risk or risk anything to do it.
Yeah.
It's. I feel like if you're not sacrificing something, you know, other than privacy, what flesh do you have in the game? Nothing.
Yeah.
Or have you not already sacrificed something to propagate a message or advocate for something? What have you been through? Show me your scars.
Yeah.
You know, scars are
Yeah.
a beautiful thing.
Yes,
That's
they
what I
are.
look at. I look at what have you been through. Show me your. All we have to sell is a narrative, but it has to be authentic because people can see through a fake narrative.
Absolutely. Scars tell a story.
Exactly. I'd rather walk with a man with scars than one that doesn't have a mark on him.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I do
And
love
scars
that.
aren't always scars aren't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
No.
scars aren't
No,
always
you're good.
physical. I always keep that in mind.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Some of the deepest and longest scars we have are ones that people can't see.
True.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what led you into recovery ultimately? What got you to that point where you said, man, shit needs to change?
It was August 2017, and I think that was just rock bottom. My organs started failing. My mental health really got bad. My addiction had gotten bad. was going through custody stuff with my oldest son. My wife left. I was getting threatened with custody stuff with my youngest son. Everything just hit uh, crescendo of just wow. And I got sick of myself.
Mm.
I realized I wasn't being myself. I had no purpose. I had lost my identity, and I got sick of me.
Yeah.
And I realized all this stuff was going on because I was letting it happen. I was letting life happen to me. It wasn't she did this. It wasn't he did this. It wasn't life wasn't happening to me. Life was happening for me, and that's how I was responding
Yeah.
with the addiction, with me not taking care of my health as best I could because it'll never be good, but it could be better than what I was having it at. My mental health will never be good, but it could be better than what I was having it at. So when I got sick of myself, and my current fiance, she was an old friend of mine, and it was suggested I call her and just talk to her. And
Hmm.
she began to give me steps. She said every day just get up and get dressed. Try that for a week, and I did that, and it began to make a difference. Then the next week she said, okay, every day get up and clean the house, even if it's clean, just go through the motions. And that
Hmm.
they got me back up and moving and that was helpful. So she really helped teach me. She really helped save my life because she helped add the regimen back to the dad and helped me integrate things. But she didn't do the work for me.
Yeah.
She would come by once a week just to check on me and look in my eyes, and so that was very beneficial too. But it was really just me getting sick of myself, realizing I can't do it for my kids, I can't do it for my marriage that was over, I can't do it for anyone other than myself,
Yeah.
and that's what really kickstarted it. And having a
Yeah.
process and having a plan for recovery.
And she really kind of she handed you a sense of accountability by
Right,
having to get up and by having to do those chores and get the house clean, and then she gave you a sense of purpose because you said you lost a sense of purpose. Well, at that point, like I don't know if this was the same for you, but for me, like getting up out of bed was the hardest thing. And
right,
then making my bed was the next hardest thing. But when you start doing those things and you see that you're doing those things, you start to become proud of what you're doing. And then that sense of, creates a sense of pride that, hey, I was able to get up out of bed, make my bed, and hell, cook myself breakfast this morning.
right. And it's easier to see the next thing, that the next sense of purpose, the next goal. And if you can, and if you can apply that to the life of someone that's not in recovery, just on a normal, healthy person with no mental health problems, no albatross of addiction, and they apply that and they can be successful with that. It's just
Yeah,
that people just have a lazy mindset.
yeah, yeah,
So, you know,
yeah. A lot of people want the results, don't want to put in the work.
or the time, or the
Yeah,
time. If they get to it and implement some strategies and apply themselves, it doesn't take nearly as long as they think it does.
yeah, yeah. I'm pretty prevalent on social media. You are too. That's how we met. That's
Right?
how we met. But I had somebody come to me on TikTok and was like asking me, you know, the steps and if she should go into rehab or not. And I told her yeah, and she was like, oh well, um, I could lose my job. And I said, well, you're not gonna have a job if you're dead,
Right?
because it'll fucking kill you eventually.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, I got a family. I said, you're not gonna have a family if you stay this way.
No.
And she said, well, I don't have anybody to watch my kids. And I said, you got to figure it out. If
Yeah.
this is what you want, you got to figure it out. You got to put the time in, you got to put the work in. Thankfully, she came back to me and said, I go to rehab next week.
Okay.
And
Good.
my mother-in-law's coming to to watch the kids. And I was like, well, that's awesome. That's cool. And I'm glad that you made that decision. But the message that I want to put out to people, and I'm pretty sure you can agree, is that is that you've got to virtually give up everything in order to get everything back.
True. You have to be willing to walk away from the kids for a while. You got to be willing to walk away from the job, from the house, from everything, from to move, and start over. Because if you're not willing to do that, and there's a good chance you won't succeed in your sobriety. And
Yeah.
if you're not willing to do what you have to do to succeed in your sobriety, there's a good chance your life will end at some point, or it will cease to be what it is you imagine it being, and it will affect your parentage.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a good chance you will lose custody of your children at some point for some amount of time, or it will be threatened
Yeah.
because you choose not to seek help.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, it's just
That's
reality.
yeah. That's yeah. That's reality. And one of the things she came to me and was like, oh, and one of the things I noticed is that when we enter into these programs, we come up with all the excuses not to and no reasons to, right? So she came to me and said, "Oh, I could lose my house because I'm not going to have a job. I'm the only one working." I said, "Okay, well, if your husband's disabled, there are programs in your state that can help finance you being in recovery at this point." And I said, "Once you get into recovery, they'll help you with
Right.
those things." I said, but right now you've got to focus on you. You can't focus on everybody around you. You got to focus on you. And once you get better, you can help other people along the way.
Right. And it
And
goes to, it goes to speak to how we treat mental illness and addiction, because it was clearly an emergency situation. Now, had she
yeah,
had a gunshot wound, do you think she'd be haggling about going?
no, absolutely not.
We have to treat it. We have to learn to destigmatize it, to decriminalize it, and treat it as though it's a triage situation.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things she was like, "Oh, I can just stop." I'm like, "Has it worked before?" No. I said, "What's going to make it change now?" And then and I was like, I'm not trying to be, an asshole. I'm not an asshole, but those questions came out that way. And I said, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but the reality is that it's not worked before. The definition of addiction is many failed attempts to quit a substance, right? Roundabout. And it's failed. And I'm not saying that you're a failure, but you failed. And so now it's time to get help and to work on those things. And I'm glad that she decided to get help.
Yeah.
And so to her, I'm happy. I hope that it works for her and everything like that. So what was your program like when you guys started? Did you kind of roughneck it and do it on your own with your now fiance, or did you get help along the way?
I kind of roughnecked it, and really did it on my own. I ended up relocating out of the neighborhood I was in. I moved from Dallas. I'm of the mindset that it's important to move physically from where you are, because you really can't recover being in the same neighborhood around the same people.
Yeah,
It's not conducive to
yeah,
to recovery. So I relocated, started off fresh, new environment, new habits. You have to change your habits. You can't do the same thing. Um, that's part of your recovery too. Um, and I just roughnecked it, man. I just changed my habits. I found a new purpose. I tried to apply those same things I was doing before to new things. There was an adjustment, because it doesn't necessarily translate.
yeah,
Wanting to get up at 2 in the morning and feeling like walking the streets doesn't necessarily translate to running a nonprofit. You know,
yeah, yeah.
it can in some strange ways, I guess, sometimes if you're brainstorming, but not if you're trying to do a fundraiser. It's not the legal kind, but
Right.
uh, I tried to, I just tried to find new ways to do things. So the same feeling you would get when your guy would pull up and you finally, got your stuff, I would try to find something in my nonprofit that would give me my same feeling. And I would find something that gave me a purpose, and I would pursue that just relentlessly. So you know how when you're using and you kind of get up with the feeling of, okay, I'm going to score today, and my day's going
Hmm.
to go such and such. I would just apply that to, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to work on this, work on this, work on this, and work on this. So it would kind of work like a template.
Yeah.
So that need would still get met. And I know what I'm saying may sound weird to some people, but this is really what kind of felt that day to day gap. to where it
Mhm.
wasn't so hard to make that transition off of that.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I would do. And like I said, little things that would give me that little rush, like when I like get a new collaborative relationship that's going to help somebody.
Mhm.
That gives me that little rush I would get from that. You know,
Mhm.
so and I talked to a couple of other people that have kind of done the same thing I've done, and we all realize we all do the same thing in varying ways.
Mhm.
Some people is way more pronounced, some people is a little bit more subtle, but we realize we all do the same thing. We've all transposed that addictive nature, those rituals to new things, and we've all try to have found purpose driven ways to do it. And
Yeah.
once you do that, I'm not sure how everybody feels about God, but I'm not necessarily religious, but I have a deep faith,
Mhm.
and it's come through my purpose and just me just seeing what I believe. Everybody believes what they believe. I don't care. I rock with
Mhm.
everybody.
Mhm.
But, it's just cool what I'm getting to do and experiences I'm getting to have, and I'm blessed for it. And my
Yes.
recovery is part of my narrative, so I'm just sharing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why Dallas? What was it about Dallas that brought you there?
Okay,
Tell me it wasn't the Cowboys.
I'm not. I'm a huge anime fan, and
Mm.
Dallas has always been known for being a big anime city. I
Mhm.
visited anime with my first wife for
Mhm.
a family reunion when we first met. Loved it here. My oldest sister lived here for a while, for about 5 years with her job. Loved it here. My fiance moved here with her job years ago. Loved it here. I've just been drawn here, and
Mhm.
it's like a straight trip between here and Memphis, and just something just drew me to Dallas. And I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. There's a link between Memphis and Dallas. It's just Memphis and Dallas, Memphis and Dallas, and
Yep.
I just love it here. I love my hometown, but I love it here. It's just perfect for me.
Yeah. Speaking of pro wrestling, I got to go to SummerSlam when I was in Nashville.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I missed WrestleMania this year because I had an out of town speaking engagement, but I got to volunteer at Access. So yeah, I'm a huge wrestling fan, huge Batman fan, anime fan, comic book fan, gamer. So I'm a geek.
Yeah. So this kind of has to like bring you home.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've and it's weird, and there's a weird parallel between people that I've met and myself. Like one of the guys that I was talking to from a Facebook page I'm on, his name is Chris Milson. He was one of my first guests. I was sitting there talking to him, and I seen this line on his shirt, and I looked at it, and I was like, "Are you wearing a Triple H shirt?" And he was like, "No, I'm wearing an Undertaker shirt," and I was like, "Oh." And like weird parallels, weird connections, so like this, it used to be super formal. Like I had all my books and my stuff in the background here, and I was like, man, I need something that because I am in recovery, but I want to showcase my personality, right?
Right.
So I had this Batman cutout, I had
Oh,
this fiend cut out, and I was like, I gotta put him in there. They got to be back there. And then so I had the John Moxley autobiography back here, and I was like, man, I got to put that up there too. Well, he's walking a path of recovery too, and so I was like, boom, got to put that up there. And then I just so happened to get the WWE title at SummerSlam, and I was like, well, there's my accent. There it is.
yeah.
Yeah, because we're champions in recovery.
That's right. That's right. Because there's a certain confidence I notice that people that are in recovery have that other people don't have. It's not an arrogance,
Yeah,
but it's like a pride we have, you know,
yeah,
and it's like a compassion that we have. So, it's a cool thing to be part of. I would rather we didn't have to go through what we have to go through to get into it, but
yeah,
it's a beautiful thing to be part of. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
appreciate
yeah. It's pretty cool, and some of the cool situations that we get put into because of recovery really kind of speak volumes. Like I didn't see my daughter, my biological daughter, since I had been sober. And I went to Nashville, and just so happens she lives up in Clarksville. Her and her family is stationed at Fort Campbell,
Mhm.
and so when I got into Nashville, or prior to, I called her mom and said, "Hey, I'm gonna be in Nashville. Would you mind if we did dinner like the night that I got into town?" And we did dinner. The last time they see me, I was in my active addiction. I was in rough shape. I didn't look like myself, and so when they met with me, there was this warm and fuzzy, and it was awesome. It felt great. I got to present myself as somebody completely revolutionized and changed. And later on in the week, I was like, "Hey, look, I got this possibility. I might be able to do SummerSlam." I was supposed to fly out on a Thursday, but I asked to extend my flight so I could go to SummerSlam. And I said, "Hey, you know, uh, I might be able to go to SummerSlam. I would like to, bring our daughter." And my daughter's mom was like, "In a heartbeat,
Yeah,
in a heartbeat." And people can say, "Oh, it's because you haven't seen your daughter in so long." That could be true, but it could also be true that they seen a change in me. That I'm not who I used to be, and I'm not, and the face that they seen behind a screen for 3 years, almost 3 years, can be faked. But when
true.
you meet that person in person, and you see that they are about what they're saying that they're about, and they're living this way, and they've changed, then something in the hearts of other people around you start to change.
Especially in those that knew you when you were in the throes of like your ex, when
Oh
they
yeah.
could see the change in you. Because it's funny you bring that up because I went through the same thing with my ex-wife, and she can see the change in me, and we went through a messy divorce, but we are
Yep.
we are good friends now.
Yep.
And it's, I mean, and I'll say it does hit a little different when they see the change in you because they went through the worst with you.
Yeah.
And when they see the change and you can tell that they're genuine and they treat you with a certain respect, that's especially as a parent, and you can start to co-parent with them.
Yep.
That's when you really can feel that you are in deep in your recovery, and you can see and you can feel your progress,
Yep.
and you can feel it as a man.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
that's just me though.
Absolutely. Now, now we're gonna talk about something fun real quick because I like to talk about something fun.
Okay.
Uh, Top fives of pro wrestling.
Ooh. Okay. Top five workers. Top five workers. Top five what?
Uh yeah, top five workers.
Okay. All right. All time. Okay. Just top five or in order.
It doesn't have to be in order.
Okay. Uh, Flair, of course. Uh, Michaels, of course. Uh, I'm gonna put Lawler on there. I'm gonna put Jerry Lawler on there.
Mm. Memphis man.
Yeah, I gotta put him on there, and I can explain it if need be. Uh, oh, um, I am going to also put Undertaker on there. I think he's the best big man ever. And as far as worker, uh, Guerrero, Eddie Guerrero.
Mm. That's a good list. That's a good list. I think I know why you put the king on there. That man has won more world titles than I think anybody has.
Well, I tell you why I put him on there because I watched a lot of Memphis wrestling for nostalgia, and I was just thinking about somebody was just listing everybody he's worked with, and he's worked with literally everybody,
Mm.
and he's worked pretty much every because I was just watching the match. He worked with Bachwinkle, and he
Mm.
worked Bachwinkle style.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
the first half of the match was Bachwinkle style, and the second half of the match, like the last end, was more Lawler style. But he was able to work. and match Bockwinkel. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? So I'm thinking
yep.
everybody that came into Memphis, literally everybody came in, but he was able to work their style.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking he's underrated a lot.
Oh yeah.
So that's why, yeah. Plus, I'm biased, but hey, at least I can argue my point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you do make a very solid point.
Yeah,
You do make a very solid point. You brought up a very interesting name at the end of Eddie Guerrero.
yeah.
Why do you think Eddie Guerrero? I don't disagree with you. Why do you think Eddie Guerrero?
I'm thinking about some of his early stuff. I'm just thinking him as a worker, as a performer. Have I ever seen a bad Eddie Guerrero match? No. Have I? I'm thinking about just his performance in every match. Um, it's always been consistent. He's always worked hard. I never think of, oh, he could have done this better, or always consistent. Always, if it's an Eddie Guerrero match on, I'm stopping watching. So that's what makes me think of Eddie Guerrero in my top five.
I have a favorite match of all time, and it's gonna throw you off, and you might be like, "What?" Because
Okay.
it's not like a very. It was on a pay per view, but it's not like a very famous match. But it was Eddie Guerrero versus Dean Malenko at Starcade '97.
Okay, I might go back and watch it. I will go
Yeah,
back and watch it.
that's the Starcade where Hogan and Sting fought for the first time in 18 months with
Yeah,
the botched finish and everything. Um, but it's the first match on the card, and that match had so much great storytelling, and then not to mention, they talked about it on the show, but or in that match. But Dean Malenko's wife literally gave birth that day to their kid, and he went home. And Eric Bischoff said, "I cannot reschedule this match
yeah,
because I've rescheduled a few other ones on the card." So he flew Dean Malenko back, and Dean Malenko worked with Eddie Guerrero mere hours after that happened. And so I have respect for Dean Malenko. I think he's one of the best technicians of all time.
yeah,
But
yeah,
mad respect for Eddie Guerrero for sticking with it and putting it together. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. And I read this book. I love this book. Cheating, Death, Stealing Life. Great,
Yep.
great, great book. Great book.
Yep. Yep. And Eddie Guerrero's story in itself is amazing. And I think one of my favorite promos is with him and Brock, where Brock called him an addict, and he said, "Yeah, I am."
Yeah, and I think the reason his story probably resonates with me is because he did overcome addiction.
Yep.
And so many. And I guess the reason his book is one of my favorites because some of the things that he went through resonate with me. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, some of the exact same things. So I think I got a soft spot for people in recovery. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always like now being in recovery. I look at people that are doing that are advocating for recovery, that are living lives of recovery, uh, in the open. They're celebrity figures. They're living life in recovery, and they're advocating for it. I think that's amazing. DDP is one of those people that I look up to. DDP is a huge one, and actually, in October he's coming up to Alaska with a show,
okay,
and I get to meet him, and I'm straight up gonna thank him. I'm gonna say thank you for saving Scott Hall's life because you did.
yeah,
Thank you for saving Jake the Snake. That's my childhood, you know, because you did that. Like, yeah, they put the work in, but you were the one who brought them up out of the street and reinvigorated their life,
true,
and just the amazing human being that he is. And then he also saved W. Morrissey or Big Cass.
yeah,
I don't know if you know his story or heard his story of what
hmm,
happened with him.
yeah,
Yeah, the transformation that W. Morrissey made was amazing too.
it really
And
is.
yeah, and to see where he was to where he is now, in his life, it's just amazing.
And just what he's doing with Buff Bagwell too. You know,
Yeah, Buff is another one that's coming up here,
yeah,
so that's pretty cool. I get to meet them and talk to them. On top of meeting like Orange Cassidy and the Acclaimed, I'm really excited
yeah.
about that. I love Max Caster. I love, especially that line about Vince McMahon retiring. I was
True,
like, oh my god.
true. And I'm so excited to see what Triple H does as far as
Oh
picking up
yeah.
creative and things like that. Because I think the future is in good hands. But I think it's funny with remember the pipe bomb promo when he said your doofus son and idiot
Yeah.
daughter or son will take over, and this kind of ended up happening.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but it
It's
I think it's going to be fun over the next few years to kind of just see how things play out. And
it's
it's gonna,
it's a crazy time to be a wrestling fan.
it is. It's a fun time though.
Oh yeah. You got so much to choose from, and why do you have to choose? You know what I mean? Like that's the one thing
Watch
I don't like.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I dip my hand a little bit in everything.
yeah. Like I actually get to catch AEW tonight, so I'm actually looking forward to it. So
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I like the direction that pro wrestling is heading in, and what it's doing. Because at this point you don't know who's going to pop up where.
right, and this one is the most fun because see, when the Monday Night Wars were going on, I was 18 years old and in college, so
Mm,
I was an 18-year-old kid. So on Monday nights, I would hurry. I would go grab like a bunch of food and hurry home, or get with friends, and we would watch both.
yeah,
So that was like prime time for me. So this is kind of reminiscent of that a little bit. It's kind of
ab-
feeling like that again at 44. So I'm
absolutely.
having a ball.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, man, is like I've got to create some of these lifelong friendships based off of pro wrestling, like
Yeah,
just being fans of pro wrestling. Uh, my best friend of 20 years, him and I started like we hated each other in school, absolutely hated each other in school. But I went to his house one time because he has a twin brother, and I was friends with his twin brother. They had wrestling on, and I sat and I liked wrestling at the time, and him and I made a connection that way. I have another friend from North Carolina. We've been friends for 10 years now, and it started off with pro wrestling, like and all these cool friendships, not just because of recovery, but because of pro wrestling,
right.
have created these lifelong friendships. And pro wrestling is kind of taboo, right? Like you can't just come out and say I like pro wrestling without getting some shit.
Yeah,
You gotta have that special bond with people. So yeah, this is another friendship I created off
right,
off of pro wrestling.
right.
Absolutely, that's
Because I like
awesome.
talking about being like I was the last generation that grew up with Memphis wrestling.
Yeah,
So that last generation where it was like sellouts at the Coliseum and stuff like that, I was the last generation of that. And
yeah,
so I like telling people about how Memphis, like ratings wise, Memphis would get like a 70 share on
yeah.
wrestling. And that was like unheard of. And just cool stuff like that and stories and stuff like that. So moving to Dallas, there are a lot of independent shows. So I'm looking at, when I'm able, checking out independent shows and doing stuff like that around here and checking out some cons. So, it's the cool thing about life. I want people to try to get out of anything I say today. Try to make connections with people because you never know what you can make a connection over. Like one thing I connect with people over is like anime. I met my best friend, me and my best friend, uh, we we uh, we met over Dragon Ball. I couldn't stand him at first, but we were the best men at each other's weddings, and our sons have the same birthday. I met him when I was 19. We're still best friends.
Oh wow.
I have a lot of best friends. You're
Yeah.
my friend now, so we bonded over wrestling. So
Yep.
that's something we can
Yep.
just talk about. You can be like, "Hey, did you see what happened?" I'll be like, "Yeah, did you see that angle? Yeah, you know."
Yeah.
So make connections with people over things because you never know. You might connect over pickling.
Yeah.
You've made a friend. So life is too short. Make connections over things. Worry about things that we have more in common than what we don't. And
Absolutely.
you don't want to miss out on a blessing because you never know what way they may manifest themselves.
Absolutely. All right. Now let's talk about METTA Association, brother. What tell us what that's all about.
All right. Well, METTA Association is a nonprofit I started 4 years ago when I moved to Dallas out of cigarette money when I stopped smoking. Wanted to do something that would help spread awareness about black mental health in general, fight recidivism, and advocate for fatherhood for all. Um, you can reach us at metaassociation.org. That's our website. You can go there and donate, support, volunteer. We are looking for volunteers. Um, our phone number is there. Our office number is 214-810-6518. One project I am announcing, we are in pre-production for a documentary. The purpose of the documentary is to discuss mental health and how it's treated in Africa. This is a passion project of mine. I was thinking about how we address mental health in Black America, and I wanted to explore how it's addressed in Africa to see if there's a correlation to start that discussion. I was talking to a friend in Nigeria, and she was saying that it's actually not addressed at all, and that struck me emotionally. It's actually almost drove me to tears that it's actually not addressed. So I want to go over there and document that. I want to show that. I want to the world to see that and see if we can make some headway in this country and help people here. So we're in pre-production for that. Information will be forthcoming, but it's called a feast, and information will be coming. And I'm excited about that and going to use that as a vehicle to help people as well. So just check out our site, METTAassociation.org, and you can email me at gbrooks at mettaassociation.org.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I like how you're using the assimilation of how mental health is used in Africa versus here.
Right.
You know, and that's very important. That's
Right.
very important. You know, and I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing. I think what you're doing is amazing, and I hope you don't ever sell yourself short. I hope you don't. You're doing amazing fucking work.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're doing amazing work. You know you're advocating for your community. You're keeping your programs strong. You know you're helping others along the way, and what better person to do it?
I guess.
I can't think of anybody better. I can't think of anybody better.
Thank
Um, so 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 you know before we shut down shop, um, what what advice or suggestion would you give somebody that's kind of currently going through the struggle, or you know they're thinking about getting a recovery or getting some mental health services? What advice would you give them?
you. Get in someplace today. Start it. Don't sit around too long researching it. Don't think about it too much because you can easily talk yourself out of it. But get in someplace today. Walk in somebody's door ASAP and sit down. Hurry up and sign your paperwork and get started. Um, because that self doubt, the naysayers, the people that we use with, they're going to be like, don't do that. Now let's just go do this. Hurry up and get started.
Yep, yep. A lot of people are worried about the insurance
Yeah,
portion of it, and I you know that can be a concern, but that shouldn't be your number one priority.
yeah. Your life is your number one priority.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, and you did hit on another point is we can talk ourselves out of it. We have you talked you've talked yourself out of it before, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that's number. We are our biggest enemies when it comes to recovery. You know, we put well, we don't put those thoughts in our brain, but our brain uh, has thoughts that are generated, and we you know we kind of feed those thoughts with our ego and with a lot of other things, and then that kind of puts our recovery on the back burner. But once we stop and we say, okay, this is just a thought and I can do this, you know, we are more powerful than our brain at times.
Right. And the first person that the addiction teaches us to manipulate is ourselves.
Hmm.
You know. So we know
Absolutely.
how to talk ourselves out of not doing what we don't want to do and doing what we want to do. So, we're the easiest whistle fiddle to play. So,
Yeah.
it stands to reason that the best way to circumvent a lot of that those obstacles is just to go ahead and get there. Have someone else drive us there.
Yeah.
Just get somebody to trust. Hey, just get me there now. Don't
Yeah.
rely on getting there on our own because on that bus ride there, you could easily get off on the wrong stop. On that car ride there, it's easily just get with someone you trust and tell them get me there now.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. All right, George. I want to thank you for hanging out with me for this hour, man. It's been a blessing. It's been an honor,
thank you,
and I have some people I'm gonna push your way.
thank you, thank
I
you.
have some people. I have a good buddy of mine. He's in the army, but he's originally from Dallas, and he's been talking about doing exactly what you're doing
Okay,
now. And he's a good friend of mine. I met him when I did a training rotation at for in the army, it's called op force, so opposition force. You kind of flip your uniforms inside out. You act like the enemy.
Mhm.
And he was there, and I got to meet him. He was in the National Guard at the time, and I connected, like that with him. And great dude. Uh, his name is Chad Wimbush. Great guy. I
Okay.
love him to death. But I'll push him your way. And actually, as a matter of fact, when we get done with this recording, I'm gonna call him and say, "Hey, I got a connection for you."
Okay.
So he's a very good dude. Very he advocates a lot for the black community, for black men mental health and stuff like that. So he's doing exactly what you're doing, but you guys are kind of separated. So I would like to push him your way.
Okay. Great.
Awesome, and once again, thank
Thank
you,
you.
George, for hanging out with me, man. You're an inspiration to me. I hope you know that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, and everybody, thank you for hanging out with us for this hour. This It's been fun. I've had a great time. I created another friend. I'm excited about this. So you guys have a good day, and until next time, much love.